Submissive, it's the Russian dude. Last month, something happened that would have sounded completely insane just a few years ago in Russia. Ilya Remeslo, a lawyer, former member of the Russia's public chamber, and one of the Kremlin's system's most useful attack dogs, suddenly wrote that Vladimir Putin is an illegitimate president who must step down and be prosecuted as a thief and a war criminal. And the reason this matters is extremely simple. Remeslo was not some opposition journalist, not some liberal activist, and not some random angry Telegram user. No, he was the kind of person who spent years helping the system itself punish people for saying exactly the kind of thing he is now saying himself. For years, Remeslo targeted Alexei Navalny, activists, ordinary dissenters, Boris Nadezhdin, Z-aligned bloggers who crossed the wrong lines, and even the wives and mothers of mobilized recruits. He was part of the machinery. He understood how pressure worked because he helped apply it. And now this very same man is saying Putin's war has become a dead end. Russia is paying trillions of dollars for it. Telegram is 80% blocked. Putin lied when he promised Russia would not follow China's internet path. And a 73-year-old ruler who has been in power since 1999 for 26, almost 27 years, now seems ready to stay on the throne until he turns 150 years old. So today, we're not talking about one Telegram rant. We are talking about the crack inside the machine itself. Because when former loyalists stop blaming bad generals, bad ministers, bad officials, and start pointing directly at Putin, the real question is not whether Remeslo suddenly became a hero, because, well, obviously he did not, you will see why. The real question is whether people like him can smell something inside his system in changing, and changing very fast. Here's where it gets interesting, because Ilya Remeslo's past is exactly what makes this story so explosive. He was often described as a professional snitch, believe it or not. And that phrase is not just an insult, not to him. It explains his function. He ran Navalny leaks, attacked Alexei Navalny and his allies, went after activists, filed complaints, helped create legal pressure, and acted like one of those useful system tools that turn political criticism into paperwork, paperwork into accusations, and accusations into punishment. In 2022, when Navalny criticized the pro-constitutional amendments and started calling the people involved in this advertisement psychopaths and traitors, Remeslo helped push the case towards criminal, because one person in the video was Ignat Artemenko, a World War II veteran. The advertisement also included people ranging from a stay-at-home mom to Mikhail Shivtkoi, the former Minister of Culture, but the political trick was extremely obvious. Take Navalny's broad criticism, frame it as a personal attack on a veteran, and transform what could have been an insult case into a literal felony. That is Russian political technology in one literal sentence. Wrap criticism in legal language, attach a sacred symbol, the veteran, and pretend that the court is just neutral, so the consequences, the decision is pretty much obvious. Remeslo also attacked Pavel Grudinin, the Communist Party presidential challenger in 2018, because even controlled elections apparently become too dangerous when someone looks a little bit too popular. He filed a complaint against Maxim Katz, while Katz was supervising Anastasia Brukhanov's general election campaign, which apparently led to a warning Katz only learned about later. During the Ukrainian war, Remeslo helped humiliate, and I'm not kidding, humiliate the wives and mothers of mobilized recruits. Literally a jail offense in Russia, but not for him, including people behind the Way Back Home Telegram channel, because even families asking when their husbands and sons might return apparently somehow became a threat to the official narrative. Then he went after Boris Nadezhdin, whose presidential bid scared the authorities because his mild anti-war message gave Russians a way, a legal way more importantly, to show that they were not as united behind the Kremlin as television pretended. And in one of the funniest episodes of the pro-war infighting, Remeslo targeted Z-aligned bloggers who criticized the official line, only to discover that one of his targets had support from General Abdi Alaudinov, commander of the Akhmat Special Force Unit, Chechens basically. After that, obviously, Remeslo had to record a public apology in Chechnya, as they like to do, sitting next to Alaudinov and praising him like a man who suddenly realized he had barked at the wrong dog. So when this exact man suddenly says Putin must go, this is not just another opposition statement. This is a piece of the system breaking off and making noise all the way down. By the way, I see that some of you guys in the comments do miss ridiculous Russian propaganda. Well, it's not going anywhere, it is just being released as an additional chapter exclusively on my Patreon. So if you want some bonus content, please go ahead and check it out, the link is down below, there is 1 month free trial, and your memberships are what keep the Russian dude going for more than 4 years. Thanks so much, now let's continue. Now here's the game changer, because Remeslo did not post some weak statement about mistakes or concerns. He gave 5 reasons he is no longer supporting Vladimir Putin, and then added a 6th one, because apparently once the dam cracked, the water just kept coming. His first reason was the Ukrainian war, obviously. Remeslo said that what was supposed to be a quick police operation has already taken between 1 and 2 million lives. He admitted that in 2014 he publicly supported the annexation of Crimea because he believed it was bloodless and because people like him saw Putin as a unifier of Russian lands. But now, according to Remeslo himself, that road led to assaults, deception of contract soldiers, huge losses, a deadlocked war, and a conflict that could continue for another 5 to 10 years minimum, while ordinary Russians get nothing except losses and paying those bills. His second reason was the economic price. Remeslo pointed to sanctions, destroyed infrastructure, lost trade partners and official statistics that, according to him, already admit to trillions of dollars in losses. He said that money could have gone to something better, into new cities, schools, children's hospitals, housing, utilities and just normal development in a country where tens of millions were poor even before the war started. Instead, he said, Russia got palaces for Putin and his friends. He even mentioned Novosibirsk, where authorities were destroying people's livestock, which is almost too symbolic. The state claims it is defending civilization, while ordinary people lose animals, income and stability. His third reason was the internet crackdown. Back in 2017, Remeslo personally asked Putin at the All Russia People's Front event, pretty much, about Russia's internet future, and Putin said that Russia would never follow China's path. Remeslo now says Putin, well, guess what, lied. He said that the internet does not work properly, even in major cities, Western social media platforms and messaging apps are blocked, Telegram is 80% non-functional, and back in April the authorities wanted to introduce even a full ban, even though Russian soldiers themselves use Telegram for communication on the front lines. Meanwhile, people are being pushed towards the Kirienko-controlled or FSB-controlled Max messaging app, because apparently the solution to Russia's problem is not healthcare, education, wages or infrastructure, but just another controlled platform. His fourth reason was Putin's endless rule. Putin is 73 years old, has been in power since 1999, and has ruled for 26, almost 27 years. Remeslo joked that it looked like Putin plans to stay until he turns 150. And well, honestly, in modern Russia it is just one image pretty much. A country pretending it has institutions, elections, courts, parties, parliament and public debate, while everything else still revolves just around one single person. His fifth reason was Putin's contempt for voters. Remeslo called Putin's recent direct line Q&A events a joke, saying that Putin does not care about domestic policy, people's grievances, internet access or decent wages, because he wants just endless war, while his own children and relatives are not on the front lines. He also pointed out that there is no real opposition in Russia. For 26 plus years, Putin talked about critics, but Remeslo challenged people to name one parliamentary or public figure inside Russia who openly still criticizes Putin. Guess what? There are none. Because those who tried were labeled foreign agents, pushed out, imprisoned, or removed from public or even actual life. And finally came the sixth reason: luxury. Remeslo said he used to think investigations about yachts, palaces, residences were exaggerated, but by 2026 it could no longer be hidden. According to him, Putin has roughly 20 palaces across Russia, a fleet of jets, armored trains, and a system so corrupt and incompetent that everything leaks to foreign intelligence agencies. He compared Putin to Shura Balaganov, the Soviet satirical character, who could be handed 50 to 100,000 rubles per month and still be stealing 13 rubles from an old woman, babushka, because just his instincts kicked in. That comparison is brutal because Remeslo's point is that Putin was handed high fossil fuel prices, massive resource-rich country, public support, historic opportunity, and instead of building a world-class AI, Mars space program, serious explorations, or better living standards at least, He chose palaces, озеро дача friends, control, luxury, and war. But why this guy, Ремесло, even switched the sides so suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere? Let's try to answer this question next. The next part is where most people mess up, because the first reaction was to assume that Remeslov's post had to be just fake. People said that his Telegram channel was hacked, then he recorded a video, said no, he wrote everything himself. People said maybe the video was a deepfake, it was not still. Others suggested it was a Kremlin provocation designed to expose disloyal people in the pro-war camp. But that theory still does not really work, because the Russian government can provoke people in many ways, but it does not usually break its biggest taboo by attacking Putin personally. That taboo is sacred. You can criticize ministers, governors, local officials, obviously, corruption in abstract language, or even the Ministry of Defense itself from just obviously patriotic only angle, as long as you do not connect the dots too directly. But Putin himself is supposed to float above this entire system, completely separate person. Everything bad comes from below, everything good comes from above. And nobody is supposed to say that the man who built the vertical power structure might be responsible for what the structure produces. Ремесло said exactly that. For years, pro-war bloggers described chaos, corruption, shortages, deception, censorship, bad decisions, and incompetence, but stopped right before saying the final word: Putin. It was always bad generals, bad officials, hidden liberals, oligarchs, poor management, or bad communication, never the boss. Ремесло pointed directly upward. In one video, he said that if Putin had surrounded himself with competent people who could criticize him and tell him the truth, he might have been far more dangerous, because he could have conducted the war way more effectively and strengthened his power way more efficiently. But Putin, according to Ремесло, is afraid of worthy rivals and genuine competitors, so he surrounds himself with looters, loyalists, and spineless people, making the system weaker every single year. Ремесло then said that there are clear signs of an approaching collapse and that Putin will most likely lose power in 2026. Wishful thinking, according to me, but still, hopefully. Is that guaranteed though? No. Russia can look unstable for a very long time while still functioning, because authoritarian systems can absorb a lot before they truly break. But the point is not whether Ремесло has a crystal ball. The point is that someone who spent years near the regime's machinery now seems to believe Putin's ship is no longer unsinkable. And when a rat jumps off the ship, you do not question whether it will stay afloat or not. Both the ship and the rat, I guess. You gather necessities, you look for a lifeboat while there are still some, and that is the chain reaction that is bound to happen at some point in Russia's future, if not sooner than later. Let's talk about it now for the next chapter. Let's now take this one step further, because Ремесло's turn did not happen in isolation. The pro-war crowd has been in disarray for a long time. And starting in 2024, that disarray became widespread. By early 26, some lesser-known Z-aligned posters were already quietly saying that the forbidden thing, and the Telegram crackdown became the final straw for many of them, because censorship feels very different when it targets the platform you use every day. A week before Ремесло's outburst, Dmitry Alshansky, a long-time host at Radio Sputnik who worked under Margarita Simonyan and Dmitry Kiselev, posted something that sounded like a civics lesson from somebody who spent years mocking those very civic lessons. Alshansky said the Russian government had created the world's best school of liberalism because it was teaching people that regular leadership change is necessary, real elections are necessary, political parties and real parliament are necessary, courts should not be attached to executive power, officials should be accountable, media should ask uncomfortable questions, and competitive private markets are better than government contracts just used for public money stealing schemes. For years, this same ecosystem mocked liberals, elections, independent courts, civil society, journalism, and literally everything that could limit power. Now, the very same of its own people are saying, well, actually, maybe we do need some of those things, you know. Not because they became saints, obviously not, but because the machine they supported has become inconvenient for them personally. That is the dark comedy of authoritarian politics. When the state pressures your enemies, it looks like order, but when it pressures you, it suddenly looks like a tyranny. Remeslo kept posting too. He mentioned the 2020 criminal case involving a puppet in Perm that mocked Putin, saying that this was where the slippery slope began, and that today such a person might be charged with high treason. He then said that if the authorities have no self-irony, they are doomed to slide into totalitarianism, and that if he were Putin, he would have laughed instead of just getting offended like a snowflake. Then, in one of the strangest turns, Remeslo called on Vladimir Solovyov to join the noble cause, arguing that even Solovyov is now being censored by state-run legacy media, and he cited Michael Nike's video as proof. Yes, Ilya Remeslo, former Navalny attacker, is now appealing to Vladimir Solovyov and citing Michael Nike. At this point, Russian politics is not a chessboard, it is a circus where the man who used to guard the entrance is suddenly shouting that the building is on fire. And if left unchecked, well, it obviously leads to devastating for the regime consequences, something we should explore in our final chapter. Now here is the most important part of the video. One Remeslo does not just bring down the system, one Telegram thread does not end a 26-year presidency, and one former loyalist speaking out does not mean that the Kremlin collapses tomorrow morning. We all wish, but unfortunately not yet. But authoritarian systems are not held together only by one police, courts, television, money and fear. They are held together by organized silence. Everyone knows the problem, everyone whispers about it, everyone jokes about it in private, but nobody wants to be the first person to say it out loud. Remeslo seems to believe many people already share his point of view, including people like Solovyov, but they are just waiting for somebody else to go first. Once one person crosses the line and survives, others may and most likely will follow. That is the floodgate logic. The first crack is small, the second crack feels less scary, the third crack becomes normal, and suddenly people who stayed silent for years start saying, "Actually, I also always thought exactly that." That is why personal criticism of Putin is so dangerous for the Kremlin, not because every critic is so powerful, but because it destroys the central myth. Everything bad comes once again from below, and everything good comes from above. If the road is broken, blame the mayor. If the hospital is underfunded, blame regional officials. If soldiers are deceived, blame recruiters. If Telegram is blocked, blame security agencies. If the economy is strained, blame sanctions. If the war drags on, blame NATO or Ukraine. But never say that the man who has ruled since 1999 created the conditions for all of it. Remeslo said it, and because he said it from inside the former loyalist ecosystem, it lands completely differently. This does not erase his past, it does not erase his role in targeting Navalny, Pavel Grudinin, Anastasia Brukhanov's campaign, Boris Nadezhdin way back home, mobilize recruits, families, activists, and smaller public figures. But history is not a fairy tale where only clean people create important moments. Sometimes a dirty instrument breaks inside the machine, and because it breaks, everyone hears the noise. Just think about Yevgeny Prigozhin and Wagner. So as for now, there are three things to watch. Will Remeslo delete the post or apologize? Will the authorities move against him with accusations like discrediting the army, spreading false information or extremism? And most importantly, will others follow? If he remains alone, this is the strange personal episode, but if more Z-bloggers, state media figures, patriotic commentators and pro-regime operators begin connecting Russia's failures to Putin himself, then this becomes more serious. Not a revolution, not guaranteed collapse, but a change in what people think they are allowed to say. In an authoritarian system, permission is everything. Maybe Remeslo truly changed his mind. Maybe he sensed danger and decided to jump early. Maybe he thinks Putin's ship is sinking in 2026. Maybe he is wrong, maybe he is right, for the wrong reasons. But when people who once held in force fear begin speaking as if they are afraid of being trapped on the wrong side of the history, you guys should pay attention. Because that does not happen in a healthy system. Guys, if you learned something new today and you want more, please subscribe to our channel, like this video. Don't forget about the Patreon, the links are down below. Thanks so much for watching, see you on Wednesday.